Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope you're having a good day today and having a good week so far. Um, Today, I wanted to specifically focus on something that had been, I kind of stumbled across this. Um, and, well, okay, before I get into it, because I want to make sure I do this properly. So, before I get into what today's episode, let's go ahead and do our daily promise that we've been doing. It says, "This then is the message which we have heard of him, and declare unto you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all." 1 John 1:5. Here lies the believer's assurance that the light of God will permeate even this dark world. Even more, God is that very light. The believer ought hold this truth tightly, despite the most tumultuous circumstance. Not all is dark, lost, or evil. Okay, I always like reading these because sometimes it can just make the day better. Anyway, I don't know if I've ever mentioned um, a YouTuber that I watch, Jacksepticeye. He's a gamer YouTuber. He does other types of videos, but mostly he does playthroughs with games that people want to watch him play. And a while back, I stumbled across one of his videos where he played a game, and I absolutely loved it. And I'm not into video games really. I don't play video games, except sometimes with my nephew I'll play stuff. But for the most part, I'm just not a video gamer. But it was just something, and it may be his Irish accent. He's funny. Um, he's adorable, but he's an adult. He's not a child, but he's still adorable. So I watch him play video games, and I watched a few, and they're just really good. I really enjoy it. However, I was watching this one game that he was playing, and for any video gamer that's out there listening, if you know the Life is Strange series, they're really good. And while this will not prevent me from still watching it or even watching him, um, I was watching the Life is Strange 2, and I noticed that there were things in it that are so off the mark of what reality is. And it made me realize that you don't only just have the media painting this false narrative about white people and cops being racist or politicians, it's now in your video games. And I mean, I just never really thought about that. I really didn't. I honestly didn't think about video games doing that. So for any parent that lets their kids play video games, I wouldn't I wouldn't let that stop you from allowing them to play a video game if it has that kind of stuff in it and it's painting this false narrative about white people and cops and things like that. I wouldn't keep your kid from playing that game. But I would definitely make sure that your kid understands that it's just a video game, and just maybe that they're overplaying it for the fact that it is a video game. That's not what they're doing, but I don't know how else you would explain to your kid that it's wrong. So, the video game I was talking about, it's called Life is Strange 2. Now they have the Life is Strange, they have Life is Strange Before the Storm. Um They have The Adventures of Captain Spirit, which is a precursor to Life is Strange 2, and those stories will mingle in together at some point during Life is Strange 2. So, anyway, the co-director of the Life is Strange series is Michael Koch, and I want to talk about what happened, okay? So this article here is from pastmagazine.com. I'm not going to read all of it, but It says one of the biggest and most positive developments over the course of the last 10 years has been the much more inclusive array of stories, but exclusively white developers still represented 61% of the industry's workforce in the International Game Developers Association's 2017 Developer Satisfaction Survey, with men representing 74%. So why is that important? It's not. Um, so the like there's just not enough representation of other races or of women in this industry. Well, did you ever think that maybe white men happen to be the ones that are more interested in game developing? It's almost like you're saying that, you know, a black woman should be interested in developing games and go into the industry purely because she's a black woman to give a little bit of diversity in it. Why? If only white men wanted to create video games, why does that matter? Honestly, it doesn't. So while stories are becoming more diverse, the teams creating those stories aren't diversifying at the same speed. And it's important to have more marginalized people telling their stories. They're video games, people. They're just games. And to make it like, see, games were supposed to take you out of reality and just let you get a break from the world. Just like reading books for me. That's what games do for people. It's just a break from reality. And if you take every social issue, every political issue, just every economic issue that we're dealing with in the real world and throw it into a video game, where's your break from reality? And since most of the stuff that they're putting in there isn't even reality, where's your break from the left's fantasy? You can't get away from it anywhere. It's everywhere. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people want to play video games that mirror exactly what's going on in the real world. Just like when everybody was in lockdown and masking up, when they started taking TV shows and masking them up and putting them on lockdowns for the same reason, I thought, why? Why can't that world be an alternate reality where what's going on here isn't affecting there? It doesn't have to represent reality. That's why it's TV. That's why it's video games. That's why it's movies, because it doesn't have to be just like reality. That's the great thing about that stuff. Anyway, so Don't Not Entertainment was best known for developing Life is Strange, is conscious of in their mission of creating games about empathy. When they announced their upcoming 2020 game Tell Me Why, which will focus on two siblings, one of who is trans, many people expressed concerns about a story centering on a trans individual being made by a team of majority cis male developers. So they're mad, or not mad, I guess. They're worried about them making a character who they can't even relate to. I'm worried about them throwing transgender characters into the video games for children because now you don't have to just worry about TV, movies, music, the education system. Now your kids can't even play certain video games because they're going to cram that junk down their throat. I hate it. Um, so when Life is Strange 2's first details were announced, I remember being wary about how the team would handle telling a story about two Latinx, which by the way, if you poll Hispanic people, none of them call themselves Latinx. They're Latina or Latino. Most of them have never even heard the term Latinx because it's made up by white liberal people who think they're doing something great. So we will now refer to the boys as Latino boys in today's political climate. To get insight on how the Don't Nod team handles emotional storytelling, writing about marginalized people, and the understandable concerns over who can tell those stories, I spoke with Michael Koch, the co director of Life is Strange, as a fan of the series and as a marginalized person who is always considering these problems in the industry. And I also hate the word marginalized because that word indicates that you are somehow less than because of your race. Not by your choice, but because of your race, you are less than and can't get ahead. I hate that. You're not marginalized. You're not. Now, you may be of the minority because there are more of a different type of race in the country or in your community, but you're not marginalized. You're not kept from doing things. And in fact, if you got an actual, now, it wouldn't surprise me if the dictionary has changed. It's why you need a dictionary that was probably published decades ago so you can get real meanings of words. But marginalized as a verb, simple past tense and past participle of marginalized, subject to marginalization, but that's not what that means. Regulated to a marginal position within a society or group, but you're not. That's not what it is. Okay. I mean, that's the definition, but these people are not marginalized. Anyway, it took over a year for Life is Strange 2 to wrap up. The first episode came out in September 2018, and the last one was just released this past December. It's easy to understand why this is an ambitious project, with each episode taking place in wildly different locations with different characters. It's also ambitious in ways the first season was not. While the first season tackled more universal issues like cyberbullying, friendship, and love, the second season focuses on specific themes like bigotry, racism, police brutality, and immigration, in addition to universal subjects like family, education, and adulthood. Addressing these subjects, especially in a game taking place in the U.S., requires a great deal of care considering America's current political climate. And let me tell you why these people don't understand what they're talking about. They're not American. They don't live in America. They don't know what they're talking about. The only thing they see is mainstream media pushing a narrative that's a lie, and people with the loudest voices yelling that racism abounds here in America. They don't know what's really going on because they don't live here. If they lived here, I think they'd sing a different tune. Um, they claim that they traveled here and that they talked to people who shared their stories about what they faced with racism, and that he said that's why we said that even if we're not comfortable with it and if it was not violence that we are facing ourselves, that it might be important to showcase that in the game to talk about it. um so spoiler alert, if you want to play the game, don't listen. It starts out, a teenage boy is bullying a little kid. The little kid's brother comes out to defend his little brother. I don't know what happened. They got into a fight and they're like throwing punches at each other. And then the bully collapses and is like having trouble breathing. I don't know what happened. And a cop happens to pull up at that time and gets out, pulls his gun, tells the two boys who happen to be Hispanic to get on the ground. Their dad hears all the yelling. He comes out. The cop, who's a white cop, by the way, is pointing his gun. And here's the thing. He didn't see what happened, but he sees a kid all bloody laying on the ground and another teenager standing there, okay? And he tells them to get on the ground. They do. But when the dad comes out and the cop tells the dad to back up, stop, the dad keeps arguing with them. And then the dad ends up getting shot. I don't think it was on purpose. Supposedly, the cop was a rookie. He'd only been on the force for 6 months, if you get further into the story. But basically, it's like if the dad would have just been quiet and done what he was told, maybe that wouldn't have happened. I'm just saying, but that's how it all starts. And if you watch the video game or play it, you'll know that the little boy has telekinesis. He doesn't know he has it, and he, his power goes off for the first time, and it ends up killing the cop by accident. The little boy doesn't even know that he did it, and his older brother gets him as he hears the sirens coming, and they run away. So now they're fugitives on the run. And another thing that happens is that they were at a gas station. They were buying some supplies and food. They went outside and sat on the bench. The owner of the store comes up. Apparently, he recognizes them from the news, and he accuses them of shoplifting. He slaps the little boy, punches the older boy in the stomach. The little boy ran away, but he tied up the older boy and called the sheriff. And as he's leaving the room, he says, "That's why we need that wall." And it really ticked me off because that's not reality. Um, that's not how things really are. That's not lurking around every corner. I've always said that yes, racism exists. Absolutely it does. But it's not like they're portraying it to exist. I work with all Hispanic women, minus myself and one other girl, and we get along great, and I don't look at them any different than anybody else. My customers don't have problems with them because they're Hispanic. None of that is going on. Just like I said, the majority of my customers are black, yet we don't have any of those issues going on because it's not real. That's the problem. It's not real. So, my whole point of bringing this up about the video games was that now you just have to be careful with what games your kids are playing because it's infiltrating even into that area. And I never thought about video games being corrupt or pushing a false narrative like the education system or Hollywood or the media. I didn't think about it. But they're part of the establishment as well, I guess. Something I learned. And they will be pushing this onto your children as well through their video games. So I don't like that about the game. But I will tell you, I'm going to give them some credit where credit is due. And I've watched the other ones that they have made. And while they're just video games, I mean, they I've caught myself crying watching the story unfold because the stories that are told, they can make you sad. And I mean, I'm sure some of these stories have really happened to people in real life. I don't know. Um, but they're good storytellers. Like some of the dialogue is cringy, but you also have to remember that the characters you're using to play, they're teenagers. It's not like they're adults or anything like that. They're teenagers. So it's going to be a little cringy. Um, but they are good storytellers. I just wish that they wouldn't push a false narrative in their storytelling because I would take it more seriously and I would respect the work more if they were just honest about everything. So, I'm not going to continue reading on because I don't want spoiler alerts. I just saw something. I haven't seen. I just started watching the second season being played, and I don't want to continue reading on about anything else that happens because I don't want spoilers. But just the two examples that I gave you is enough, and I know that there's going to be much, much more. So I'm very aware of that. And so I'm going to name off a few of the video games that deal with racial issues and they're against racism. So we know that Life is Strange too. Um, it's more about discrimination against Hispanics. Um, and it says in particular, you can see the wall between Mexico and USA because they're on their way to Mexico. They have no family. They're going to their father's family home in Mexico. Papers, Please. So it's a management simulation puzzle game about immigration, not properly racism, and it's not a narrative or expressive title. I've seen people play that. Detroit Become Human. Now this one was one of my favorites to watch, but it's not. Okay, so I'll read the description. It's a good interactive drama coming with a sci-fi metaphor for universal discrimination, social segregation, slavery, fear of diversity. It's about humans and androids. It doesn't face real or actual or historical racism. So it's the androids that people discriminate because they're androids. They don't have feelings. You can say whatever you want to them. But they do. They break out of their mold and they become, they gain higher intelligence and they're able to have feelings like people. It's a really fun game. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wish I could remember the name of the guy who played one of the main characters. But I can't for some reason. I just can't remember who it was. Um, it says in some cutscenes, action RPG Mass Effect 2 faces the diversity between humans and alien races with metaphorical intents. Multiculturalism inspires the whole saga. It's pretty cool. Wolfenstein, The New Order, and The New Colossus. Now I remember playing Wolfenstein way back when it was such a, oh, I mean, the graphics were awful, but we used to play it all the time. So this one is set in an alternate history where Nazis won World War II, and you are the hero of the resistance. As consequences, the games face topics like Aryan supremacy and racial segregation and discrimination. In particular, the second title is set in USA, fallen under Nazi domination and ruled by the KKK. The new Colossus has a more direct approach to racism. Black American people are members of the resistance against the KKK. Commentators underlined several references to the political scene of the USA in 2017. In particular, they understood KKK as a metaphor for actual alt-right movement. By the way, it's not a narrative or expressive game. It suffers from story gameplay dissonance. All content is entrusted to cutscenes, while gameplay is just centered on shooting with no respect of content, story, and characters. Um, Mafia 3. Um, it says the new Colossus, because of greater fidelity to historical realism of the 1960s USA. By the way, anti-racism and fight against white supremacy are on the background and wasted by classic ludonarrative dissonance. The black protagonist is credible in cutscenes, but in gameplay sequences, he is just a nonsense human war machine acting inconsistently and killing everyone with no purpose, moral, and pity, worse than his oppressors. Not a narrative and expressive game for sure. So, and I'll tell you, so Square Enix, EA, Ubisoft, is it Ubisoft or Ubisoft? I don't know. Sony, they give public support to Black Lives Matter, just in case you don't want to support them anymore. Um, so there you go. Um, I I don't know of really any other games. This was just an article I came across. So since we're speaking about this false narrative, okay, um, I really don't care about racial bias in the gaming industry. I was gonna look at this, but I'll read this. It says the International Game Developers Association found in the 2019 edition of its annual survey that among game developers worldwide, 81% identify as white, Caucasian, or European, 7% identify as Hispanic, and 2% identify as Black, African American, Afro Caribbean. Okay. Um, I don't know why that's important. I really don't. Um, so apparently some gaming writer, Jita Jackson, um, she said, I think the presence of more video game characters who are women of color is good. These should not be controversial statements. I'm simply stating something I appreciate, something that's relevant to me, and yet some readers responded as if I'd suggested that all gamers should amputate their pinky toes. Okay, no, that's not controversial. If you would like a video game that has the presence of a black woman or an Hispanic woman, that's fine. That's your opinion. That's what you would like to see. I don't think it's necessary because it's video games. I don't have a problem if they center games around a black woman or a black family or a Mexican family, which they did with Life is Strange 2, but I don't think it's always necessary because they're just games. Anyway, now most of the time, what we're seeing in around the racial stuff is it's mostly black people calling out white people for being inherently racist. I'm not really hearing this a lot from Hispanic people. I'm really not. It's mostly pitting blacks and whites against each other. This is an article from Real Clear Politics. It was written last year, but it's 5 arguments against America is a racist country. And I wanted to read it. It's by Dennis Prager. I wanted to read it since we're talking about, racism being played out in video games and trying to paint Trump's America when some of these games were made as horrible. Um, so the left-wing charge that America is a racist country is the greatest national libel since the blood libel against the Jews. America is, in fact, the least racist, multicultural, multi-ethnic country in world history. Neither the claim that America is a racist society nor the claim that it is the least racist country can be empirically proven. Both are assessments, but honest people do need to provide arguments for their position. I have found every argument that America is racist, let alone systemically racist, wanting. For example, the police almost never kill unarmed blacks, and on the rare occasions they do, about 15 times a year, there is almost always a valid reason, as in the infamous 2014 case in Ferguson, Missouri. Police kill more unarmed whites than blacks. The reason they are proportionately so many more blacks in prison is that the blacks disproportionately commit violent crimes and so on. That's true. You can look up the statistics yourself. There are very powerful arguments against the charge that America is a racist society. I offered one in my column last week. Number one, if there is so much racism in America, why are there so many false claims of racism and outright race hoaxes? I offered 15 recent examples. Moreover, there were probably no racist hoaxes when America really was racist, just as there were no anti Semitic hoaxes in 1930s Germany when there was rampant anti Semitism. You need hoaxes when the real thing is hard to find. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I can name Jussie Smollett, Bubba Wallace, the girl that claimed that while she was sitting at a traffic light that some guys attacked her. Uh, the girl who at the college that claimed that they destroyed, like egged or destroyed some of her property. I don't know. All 4 of those were hoaxes, and that's just the 4 I can remember. Number 2, the constant references to slavery. If there were a great deal of racism in America today, there would be no reason to constantly invoke slavery in the Confederacy. The very fact that the New York Times, the leader in racist dishonesty, felt it necessary to issue its 1619 project, which seeks to replace 1776 as the founding of America with 1619, when the first African slaves arrived in America, is a perfect illustration of the point. The fact that the 1619 project was labeled false by the leading American historians of that era, all of whom are liberals and at least one of whom led a campaign to impeach President Donald Trump, adds fuel to the argument. Even regarding the past, the promoters of the America is racist libel need to lie to paint America as bad as possible. Number 3, the reliance on lies. The 1619 project, which will now be taught in thousands of American schools, is based on lies. All Americans who care about America and or truth should inquire if their children's school will teach this, and if so, place their child in a school that does not. 2 of the biggest lies are that preserving slavery was the real cause of the American Revolution, and that slavery is what made America rich. Even the charge of endemic racist police brutality is a lie. There are undoubtedly racist police, but racism does not characterize police interactions with blacks. Number 4, the large African immigration to the United States. Nearly 2 million black Africans and more than 1 million blacks from the Caribbean have immigrated to the United States in just the last 20 years. Why would so many blacks voluntarily move to a country that is systemically racist, a country, according to the promoters of the America is Racist libel, in which every single white is a racist? Are all these blacks dumb? Are they ignorant? And what about the millions more who would move here if they were allowed to? How does one explain the fact that Nigerians, for example, are among the most successful immigrant communities? Number 5, the preoccupation with microaggressions. According to the University of California's list of racist microaggressions, saying, quote, there is only one race, the human race, end quote, is a racist microaggression. This, of course, Orwellian doublespeak. This is, of course, Orwellian doublespeak. Anyone who believes there is only one race is not by definition a racist. If everyone in the past had believed there was one race, the human race, there would never have been racism, let alone a slave trade based on racism. The very fact that the left came up with the intellectual farce known as microaggressions, like the race hoaxes, proves how little racism there is in America, because the entire thesis is based on the fact that there are so few real or macroaggressions. The race riots, the ruining of people's careers and lives over something said or done at any time in their lives, the ruining of professional sports, especially basketball and football, the tearing down of America and its history, the smearing of moral giants like, okay, can I just say, I don't mind if they smear Abraham Lincoln because he's not a moral giant. I will throw that tidbit in there. So let's cut that sentence out. Go watch my Civil War episode if you really want to know who Abraham Lincoln was. All of this is being done because of a lie. I'm still so confused why so many conservatives prop up Abraham Lincoln like some great American hero. Yeah, I know slavery ended under him, but he was not a good person. As I wrote in a column 3 years ago, the Jews survived the blood libel, but America may not survive the American libel. While the first libel led to the death of many Jews, the present libel may lead to the death of a civilization, indeed the least oppressive ever created. Okay, so that's really. Do you even know what microaggressions are? Because apparently, just asking somebody where their family is from, like if you want to know where their family, immigrated from when they came to America, even if it's one generation, two generation, three generations ago, like supposedly, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I tend to believe it. The majority of my ancestors come from Germany. And if you were to ask me, well, where do your ancestors come from? That to me, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not offensive. But apparently, asking somebody, a person of color, where their ancestors come from, it's offensive. And you shouldn't ask it. That's so stupid. So, microaggression is a term coined by psychiatrist and Harvard University professor Chester M. Pierce in 1970 to describe insults and dismissals he regularly witnessed non black Americans inflict on African Americans. Eventually, the term came to encompass the casual degradation of any socially marginalized group, such as the poor and disabled. Oh, well, I'm poor, so does that mean that people can um, microaggress me because I'm not rich? It's so stupid. People are so stinking sensitive today. They are a bunch of weenies, and I don't understand it. So, but speaking on the fact that these are all lies, let's read theroot.com. I did not read this in advance. I read some of it. So, um, I just want to see what it said. And this is the graphic is by Michael Harriot. Okay. This is about how the 10 ways that black people keep racism alive. And this actually points to my interview on the Scott Ford show because he had posted his video and some white liberal, um, you know, LBGT loving, I don't even know how, she's just a white liberal moron, an ignorant person, felt like she had to let him know that saying that my daughter was half black was racist. Now, I made the comment because he's not racist and it's not racist to say that because she is. I posted a comment and I said, well, as her mother, I will decide what someone says about her, whether it's racist or not. Um, and he was making a point. She said he should have used biracial. Okay, well, when you're trying to make a certain point about blacks and whites, biracial is very vague because biracial what? Asian and Hispanic, um, black and uh, Native American. Like, what is the biracial to it? He was making a point. And also, that is what she is. Half black, half white. It's not a racist statement. So for someone, to seem to think that they know better than her own mother, it really ticked me off. Anyway, so as one of the world's foremost experts in the field of uh why pebology, what is that? I don't even know how you say that. What? Okay, let's see what it is because I have no idea. Um, it's a black slang term for white people, particularly those perceived to be racist, unaware of their own privilege, or engaging in cultural appropriation. Oh, so it's like calling a black person the N word, except this is about a white person. Well, that's just great. So they can call white people names, but you can't call them names. Don't you dare. It's pronounced YPologist. 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 It's a humorous slang term for someone, usually a black person who studies Waipopo or white people. After all, Waipopo do some crazy stuff in need of expert explanation. That's racist. That that is racist. While we're here, let's look at the Karen. Let's look. It's a pejorative slang term for an obnoxious, angry, entitled, and often racist middle-aged white woman who uses her privilege to get her way or police other people's behaviors. Um, I don't know who. So Karen joins a trend on the internet, blah blah blah. A Becky, for example, is a stereotype for a basic young white woman, while a Chad in other corners of the internet stands in for a cocky young dude bro. So Karen has widely been credited to Black Twitter in the 2010s. Another suggestion is that it comes from a 2005 bit by Dane Cook called The Friend Nobody Likes. The friend was named Karen. An additional explanation is that it comes from the character Karen in the 2004 film Mean Girls, who's the subject of the popular quote, "Oh my God, Karen, you can't just ask someone why they're white." It's even been put forth that Karen comes from the even earlier 1990 film Goodfellas, in which one of the characters is named Karen. Um, I would tend to believe it comes more from Dane Cook. I really do. He was pretty funny. But regardless, I will tell you that it's a derogatory term and it's a racist term, just like calling a black person the N word or calling, you know, um, a Mexican person the B word. You know, it's all the same thing. Okay, or kind of like when you call white people cracker. Okay, whatever. Anyway, says I'm constantly searching for ways to translate my studies into real world applications. Fortunately, there are hundreds of white people who generously take time out of their day to accuse me of being the real racist. These scholars keep in constant contact with me to point out how I actually keep racism alive by talking about racism. It's a sad thing when you see a brother being a racist little crap bag like this. The division of this world depends on people continuing to act just like you. Keep up the good work, little guy. Scum of the earth, trying to divide the country, race baiter. I agree with you. I find Waipopo offensive too. Because I'm always open to sharing the wisdom of white America, I wanted to combine the practices that Tartar Saucians often describe as race baiting into one top 10 countdown for those who are interested in keeping racism alive. Play the victim. One of the biggest reasons racism exists is that black people love playing the victim. It has been one of the favorite Negro pastimes ever since Africans locked themselves in chains, stowed away on American cruise ships, and crossed the Atlantic Ocean. So, this is going to be sarcastic about white people saying that if they just stopped talking about it, that the racism wouldn't exist. But while they're trying to be funny, it is in fact true. You may have not you have not. Yes, black people may have been victims of slavery, you know, a century ago. Was it 150 years now? Um, so you were not a victim of slavery. So playing the victim as if you are, that is a problem. Engage in identity politics. When black people vote for black candidates, they're playing right into the hands of identity politics. Yeah, you are. So that would be just like a white person voting for a white person just because they're white. They have horrible policies. They want to do stupid things, but they're white, so you must vote for them. Just like how everybody voted for Obama simply because he was black. Because nobody knew who this man was. No one knew what he had done before running for president. He was a horrible president. His policies sucked. Obamacare is awful. But people, even white people, voted for him simply because of his skin color. That is true. And that's identity politics. Um, they make everything about race. Even when black people have no intention of playing the victim, they indirectly keep racism alive simply by making everything about race. For instance, when a group of Upper West Side parents in New York City objected to plans to integrate one of the most segregated school districts in America, the Root Fellow Anne Brannigan decided to make the parents' anger all about race. In this instance, Brannigan secretly stood at the entrance to the meeting and kept black parents from attending. Then she egregiously used actual quotes from actual parents who complained about black and Hispanic children attending the schools. In this case, it wasn't the outraged parents, the school district, or the history of segregation. It was Brannigan's fault for twisting an incident that was all about race into something that was all about race. I don't know what this is referring to, so I'm not going to say too much because I don't know when this happened. Um, but I will say that people of color, especially on the left, who are trying to paint the false narrative, they do in fact make everything about race. They do. Um, discuss history. Black people love bringing up old crap like slavery, history, and truth. They will often bring up slavery at inopportune times, like history classes. The only logical reason blacks insist on making every discussion on the Civil War about slavery and white supremacy is that every available historical document about the Civil War actually cites slavery and white supremacy as the reasons for the conflict and mentions nothing about Southern pride and cultural heritage. That's actually not true. If you actually went to the Library of Congress, you would find a lot more history on the Civil War and what the Civil War was actually fought about, which was states' rights, because um, none of the slave owners in the South were threatened with losing their slaves. They were not. They were being told that they were going to have their taxes raised to 40% by Abraham Lincoln, and they didn't want to pay 40% in taxes. And so they were promised that they could keep their slaves, nothing was going to change, but the taxes they were going to go up. So some southern states they decided to secede. And if you look at the written documents of why they chose to do this, slavery is not mentioned in any of the reasons why. Why is it not mentioned? Because they were never in danger of losing their slaves. The people who owned the slaves, they were never in danger of losing that. But they were in danger of losing their rights as a state. And then Abraham Lincoln said, nope, you can't do that. You cannot secede from the nation. And he did everything he could to keep all the states together. That includes freeing the slaves because it was just a move in his game to make sure that the Union stayed intact because it was a new country and they didn't want it dividing already. So he said if he could have saved the Union without freeing one single slave, that's what he would have done. But you also had people in the South that were opposed to slavery, but they loved their home. And they wanted slavery ended. This would be your Republicans. They wanted slavery ended. The Democrats did not. But they both wanted the rights of their state to function on its own without the federal government burdening them down with taxes. And the government that you see that we live under today, that all started because of Abraham Lincoln. The bigger government was because of Abraham Lincoln. And he violated the Constitution many, many times during the Civil War. He was a racist himself. Um, Now people say he was a Republican. He wasn't. They list him as a Republican because of the fact that he was in the South, but he was not a Republican. Just so you know that. But all of this stuff you could find in the Library of Congress. You just have to have the opportunity to be able to go and do that. And it is cultural heritage and Southern pride. It is. Because whether or not you owned slaves, if you were against slavery and owning slaves, but that was your home, you would have fought to keep your home the way your home should be kept. That was your home state and you were proud of it and you didn't want the federal government deciding how you could and could not live. So you would have fought right alongside people who owned slaves, even though you disagreed with that, because you had one common goal, and that was to keep your rights as a state. Um, be a reverse racist. One of the newest techniques in the field of racism technology is oppressing white people. So, of course, they say that, black people can't be racist because they're the oppressed group. Baloney. I'm reading racism all over this thing, especially with the word, whatever the freaking word is. You, I don't know how they even come up with that word. Uh, you think he'd come up with an easier word to pronounce? I don't know. Whatever. Use facts. A 2015 study shows that the only significant determining factor in predicting whether someone shot and killed by police was unarmed is whether or not the victim was black. Schools with higher numbers of black students receive less funding. Actually, that's not true. Students, so a lot of your inner city schools, they actually receive a lot more funding than other like suburban schools that maybe would be like majority white people. They don't allocate their funds properly. That's the problem. And you can look up those statistics as well. Mention the words white privilege. A recent study showed that black kids born to rich parents are less likely to be incarcerated as white kids born to parents making $36,000 per year. The study showed that regardless of the neighborhood, education, or income of black parents, their children will likely earn less than white kids whose parents are poorer and less educated and live in better neighborhoods. Black kids receive harsher discipline in schools. I don't believe that. Whites are more likely to sell drugs, but blacks are more likely to be arrested for it. Uh, no. No, 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 no. No. I would say that I can't tell you how I know this. Okay. So, there's some people that I used to know years ago. I will tell you, because they used to buy stuff from people, that every single person they went to buy stuff was black. Just so you know. And I think she knew like 4 or 5 people and they were all black. So that's not true. Not based on the experience that I saw with her. So that's not true. Don't blame black people. It is possible to breathe life into racism without even talking to white people. For instance, according to the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, combined with U.S. population estimates, in any given year, 95% of black people don't commit a crime. In black neighborhoods, the number of anti-violence marches, education initiatives, and crime prevention groups far outweigh the number of Black Lives Matter marches. I've never seen that. just so you know. Yet black people don't want to talk about black on black crime. Why? Maybe it's because white people never see those efforts, since media outlets don't deem them newsworthy. Well, maybe you should start telling news outlets to start showing that stuff. You don't demand the attention for it. You don't speak loud enough. But Black Lives Matter riots sure do. Maybe it's because, contrary to stereotypes, there is such a small percentage of black criminals, and maybe white people don't know about these examples because there's no reason to talk to white people about black issues. Now, it's got to be because we'd rather keep racism alive by blaming whites. Or you seem to think that the white people that are going to fix your issues are the same white people that have been making the same issues for decades for you. You depend on those white people to fix it, the ones who created it, instead of the other white people and black people and Hispanic people on the right side that are saying that it's their fault. They're causing these problems for these communities, but you keep putting them into office. Say white people. Because white people are accustomed to being seen as individuals, they hate being referred to as white people. It chaps their hides. Actually, you can refer to me as white. I don't care. Even laughing at the cockalicious phrase chaps their hide is racist, as in any variation of the term white people, including but not limited to colonizer, mayonnaise American, undermelanated, a citizen of rhythmless nation, or a Michael Rapaportian. I don't know what that is. Sorry. I butchered that. I don't have a problem with you referring to me as white. Um, Undermelanated just makes you sound like you're trying to be offensive. It's not offensive. A citizen of rhythmless nation. But there are white people that can dance, so that's not across the board. Colonizer, well, I didn't colonize people. I wasn't here when the country was created, so it doesn't even refer to me. Mayonnaise American, I've never even heard some of these phrases, to be honest. And be black. Most people don't know that white people are scientifically incapable of tasting seasonings, which saves them a lot of money but costs them a lot in ridicule. Being black means we get to do things that white people can't do, which is patently unfair. Despite the fact that White History Month is celebrated 11 months every year, which it's not, we don't celebrate white people. In fact, all I can think of is over the last almost 2 years now, all we've done is celebrate Black Lives Matter and condemn all white people as evil, horrible, inherently racist beings that are basically non human. Despite, okay, so Black History Month keeps racism alive. BET and TV1 make Waipapo upset because Waipapo only have 1,295 white television networks. Yeah, but they're not specifically white television networks. They weren't set out to create just a white network. BET is specifically black entertainment television that only black people. That is what that is. These other channels, they're not saying, oh, this is only a white channel and that's all we're doing. That is exactly what BET did. Sorry. And I know they talk about they want more representation in Hollywood, but when you look at the percentage of the population compared to what is on TV, I don't know how you want more representation when you have more white people. Yes, I get it. And less, I'm going to compare Asians to this because it's a very small percentage in Hollywood, or at least it was at the time. But if you're looking for a specific type of person, like let's say you're looking for an Asian person who's disabled, transgendered, and uh, let's just say a disabled transgendered Asian, and you want more representation of that in entertainment, but how many of them are there? You can't really represent that because it's not that many. There's not enough for that kind of representation. That's the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, but the one thing that really upsets white people is the fact that they can't use the N word without being accused of being racist. I don't, I mean, okay, so everybody knows, okay, my daughter, her dad is black. And sometimes when I used to go with him and help him do make readies on duplexes and houses, and I would help him paint and things like that, he would have music playing, and there were some songs that played that I liked. Um, I think most of you that are my age probably remember the song Bedrock, Lil Wayne, and they use the N word in that. And as I was singing, we used it. And he didn't say anything to me about using the word because I was singing a song that he had turned on. He didn't have a problem with it because I wasn't using it derogatorily towards anybody. I was singing a song. So you're telling me that because I'm white, I can't sing a song that I like and enjoy listening to? I can't use that word because I'm trying to enjoy the full song? Baloney. That's a bunch of crap. This double standard keeps racism alive because everyone knows that white people spend 22.94% of their time dreaming of a valid reason that would allow them to say the N word at the top of their lungs. I'm not looking for a valid reason, but if it's in a song that I like, I've said it. I probably wouldn't say it if I was around black people that were strangers to me that I didn't know, but if they're my friends, they wouldn't have a problem with me singing a song. They wouldn't. Um, Even when they're with their sorority sisters or in a presidential cabinet meeting, they are persecuted whenever they say something that disparages black people, and it is patently unfair. Not only does this inequality keep racism alive, but more important, it really chaps their hides. So, of course, clearly, they're trying to be racist and offend people. Good thing is, I'm not offended. You can say whatever you want because I have a thicker skin than that. It doesn't offend me because you're really trying too hard. You are trying way too hard. I have one more thing that I wanted to read, but I'm going to do it on a different episode because I'm running out of time. Because I'm going to have to end this episode here because it was supposed to be the shorter episode for Thursday and I just kept going. So if you're listening on audio, please go and subscribe to my podcast on Anchor, Pandora, Spotify, Google Podcast, anywhere you like to listen. Join my Facebook at Lauren Collins. I just got to say something. Email me, gotta say something, 21 at gmail.com. My subreddit is r/slash just gotta say something. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and share this video. It would really mean a lot to me. You can leave me a comment and I will respond. And share the video. Also, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you know whenever I upload, which is one episode a day, Monday through Thursday. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and um, I am looking forward to Friday. And I will list. I will I think I don't have any video on Friday for YouTube, but as soon as I finish doing the little series that I'm doing, reading the book on my podcast, I will start back up on Friday episodes on YouTube. Anyway, have a good day. God bless.